Starting with the Atlanta Falcons, obviously they took Kyle Pitts in the first round. Richie Grant was one of my pet cats throughout the draft process. How do you feel they did overall?
I think they did a solid job from start to finish. I mean, in Kyle Pitts, they got a once-in-a-generation tight end. I said that Kyle Pitts was basically the Trevor Lawrence of tight ends in this year's draft. He's all he's cracked up to be. I would have liked to know how deeply they explored looking at a quarterback. I would have liked to know how deeply, and the truth as far as how deeply they explored trade offers and if they got any. I don't know that we'll ever know that. I know that the owner was in favor of Kyle Pitts. The bottom line is this. I would have probably liked to see in Atlanta maybe trade down a few spots to get a quarterback, but they made a great selection. I mean, Kyle Pitts was my fourth-rated player in this draft. They were selecting for. He's an outstanding tight end that can revolutionize the position. And I think he's a good fit for that offense. Richie Grant was a guy who I absolutely loved literally for the past 2 years. And I've talked highly about him. If you go back and you read my stuff on Pro Football Network over the summer, while scouts were grading him as a free agent, I had him as a third-round pick. He's been a consistent player at Central Florida. I think he really started to take off at the Senior Bowl, where he had 3 great days of practice, was intercepting passes every single day. And it was not just opportunistic interceptions. It was interceptions where he was affording good coverage either in the middle of the field or out to the flanks. Not the fastest guy in the world, but just a smart, tough, heady football player. Round 3, they selected Jaylen Mayfield, a guy who a lot of people thought at one point in time was going to be a first-round pick. He fell because, number one, he didn't play all that well in 2020. He didn't play all that much in 2020. I think he played like 3 games, and then he was injured. He was initially going to opt out, and then he opted back in. And then his interviews just did not go very well. If you look back at the 2019 film, Jaylen Mayfield looks like a athletic right tackle who can move over to the left side. Think of Tevin Jenkins, the guy that the offensive tackle, the Chicago Bears, selected in the second round. I don't know what the plans are for Tevin Jenkins right now in Atlanta. I've seen him on the guard depth chart. I've seen him all over the place. You take a roll of the dice on a guy like this, and if you can develop him and get him to play up to his level of potential, you could have a potential starting offensive tackle, and that's a steal. Very glad to see Darren Hall get selected where he did. I thought he was an underrated cornerback. I think he's a guy, Darren Hall, the corner from San Diego State. He's probably the player that is going to break the mold of San Diego State defensive backs who come into the league with all kinds of hype and then basically fall flat on their face. They're terrible. Hall's not that type of player. He is a good football player. He's a good athlete. I think he's a guy that's going to play in nickel packages, could eventually develop into a starter. Jude Dorman was someone there were a variety of opinions on Dorman in the scouting community. If you were looking for his own blocking center, Dorman's your guy. He's not a big guy. He's not a strong guy. He gets overrun in the middle line at times. But if you give him a running start, he gets out to the second level, and he can take opponents out in motion. He's a tremendous zone blocking lineman. It's going to be interesting to see how he does, especially since they took Matt Hennessy from Temple in the 3rd round last year. And Hennessy last year, I believe, ended up starting or being number 1 on the depth chart for the Falcons. They drafted some defensive linemen in round 5. I like Taquan Graham, TQ Graham, however you like to say his name, is a 3-technique tackle and an athletic type of guy. The Notre Dame kid, whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce because I'll butcher that one, beyond all recognition, is a good pass rusher. Avery Williams in round 5 was an interesting pick. I didn't think he was going to get selected. He's a solid cornerback. I'm sure they drafted Avery Williams as much for his return skills as they did for his defensive back skills, because he is a game-breaking punt returner and kick returner, although there's not too much kick returning going on these days in the NFL. But he's that type of special teams guy. I love the pick of Frank Darby in the 6th round. I think this could be a home run for the Falcons, though they really don't need another receiver. But the fact is this, Darby is a consistent receiver. He's got outstanding hands. He showed flashes in 2019 when Arizona State had 2 real good starting receivers, one who went in the 1st round, a guy by the name of Brandon Ayuk. He showed flashes this year, although the Arizona State season, I think they played 3 or 4 games because the Pac-12 started so late, and then there were COVID issues with them and their opponents, so it was a week-to-week basis. They really didn't. They had a fraction of a season, but Darby can play. So I think he's a guy that if he doesn't make the active roster, you're looking at a developmental guy on the practice squad who will make somebody's active roster in some way, shape, or form.
And so you look at the UDFA signings, and it seems like it reads like a CVS receipt. there were, I believe, like 19 UDFA signings for the Atlanta Falcons. Which ones really stand out to you, Tony?
Yeah, CVS receipt, or maybe better yet, a receipt from the United States Postal Service. If you ever get one of them, they're like 3 miles long. There's a ton of guys on here. I'm going to pull out 2 small school guys that Atlanta Falcon fans, if they go to Pro Football Network, you will be able to get scouting reports on these guys. That is Jack Batho of South Dakota School of Mines and Keon Smith from Fayetteville State. Batho played a little bit this year. He is a big, massive, wide-bodied right tackle prospect who may kick inside the guard. I don't know that he's going to make the active roster. At the very least, I think he's a practice squad developmental guy. Keon Smith, I had him graded as draftable until the very end when I had to take some guys off my list just for numbers, and Keon Smith didn't play last year. Keon Smith was well thought of in scouting circles. And if you watched his 2019 film, he was a damn good offensive lineman, terrific blocker. I think he's a guy who can play left tackle. I think he's an athletic guy that you can kick inside the guard. Again, like Batho, I don't know that he makes the active roster, although I think he's got the skills to. At the very least, I think you're looking at a practice squad developmental type guy.